and stress tolerance, of increasing bricks, the opportunity to have better soil aggregation, water infiltration, and so forth, the opportunity to build greater soil organic matter, and potentially enhance yields. You know, I went through this yesterday. We talked about the ARISE trial, so I'll go through that very quick. Now, this is out at Aislinn Farms, okay, in Prairie, Mississippi. And I just wanted to show you some slides that show improvements that Dr. Al Smith and I have been able to make over the last 3 years utilizing some of these strategies that we've been talking about. Al, you remember this. This is the beginning, okay? This ground was historically mistreated and was in CRP and so forth and was terrible. It's the only way I know to say it, okay? It was a challenge. Al said, you want a challenge? Here's your challenge. So, and he handed it to me and said, do what you will with it. But this is where we started. So you can see a lot of exposed soil, very little ground cover, a lot of weeds, thistles, you name it, every weed known to Mississippi was out there, okay? So we implemented a lot of strategies, using high stock density grazing, strategically placing hay out there for the cattle to graze, using long rest periods, using some soil microbials, that type of thing that I presented some data on yesterday. And earlier on, we were grazing a lot of ironweed, a lot of ragweed, and so forth, and that's what the cattle were utilizing. And they learned to graze those weeds very well. If you look here at this picture, they would strip all the leaves, ragweed, ironweed, and so forth off the stalks, off the stems. But I actually did some brick measurements on the bricks measurements, and because they're so deeply rooted, they were pulling up a lot of minerals, and they had a high bricks content. Okay, so the cattle actually performed fairly well on those weeds. And this is showing, again, incrementally improvement over time. You can see that gradually, the forage species became more predominant over the weeds and got thicker, denser stands of forage. And this last year, okay, 2012, this is what we were looking at. All right? And Wayne, these are some of the areas that we had Sumagrow out on this year. Okay? So you can see, again, from where we started in that first slide to this, that is an absolute incredible difference in just 3 years. Again, this is showing some of the grazing practices. We use a lot of single-strand polywire, frequently moving the cattle. You can see here, the grazed area compared to the new paddocks that we're turning them into. So, we would try to take approximately 50% to 60% of the forage and then leave the rest of it as residue on the ground for sheltering of the microbes and soil moisture and organic matter. Now, we obviously all have concerns, and this farmer here is talking to his veterinarian, and he said, and this morning I suddenly noticed that she didn't look so good, and oftentimes that's the way we are. If we're not very careful in our observation on a day-to-day basis, then we wait too late. We're at that critical point before we actually make any changes. So another strategy to be able to help us is to utilize biological primers. Okay? And a biological primer is a diverse cover crop mix that enhances the life and function of the soil. And basically what we're trying to do with biological primers or diverse cover crop mixes or cocktail mixes is imitate native rangeland and to provide depth both above and below the soil surface. If we have a number of different plant species that we're planting out there, then we have different levels of root depth, and what happens is that effectively increases and improves your total soil microbial population because you're increasing both the depth and the mass of that rhizosphere, okay? Which is, again, where the majority of our microbes live. This is a comparison of production where we used monoculture cover crops versus cocktail mixes. And you can see that the production on a dry matter per acre basis is significantly higher when we incorporate more plant diversity. Now, the great thing about this plant diversity is that it also helps support and facilitate greater microbial diversity. Okay? So when we provide plant diversity for the whole, above and below the ground, and again, here's some things that you can put in a mix. Some people are planting cover crop mixes as diverse as this, where they're incorporating a dozen or more different cultivars. And this is an example of that cover crop mix, in terms of the seed that you would drill in. This is a warm season cocktail mix, cool season. This is right before grazing, okay, on a warm season mix. Turning the cattle in. Obviously, we're sequestering quite a bit of carbon there. This is making a new move. This is 4 hours later in that same paddock. And then afterwards, as you move the livestock again, this is the litter that we're leaving on the soil surface. Now, if we want to protect that investment in our microbes, this is one really good way to help protect that investment. If we can leave litter on that soil surface, we're providing them with a lot more moisture. We're providing the microbes with food, with everything that they need to continue